Hey YouTube. So we're going after some more pine yet. You can see that one has a heck of a crook in it. Let's see, where is it? Like this, and then all of a sudden it goes uphill. But it's not that bad. Looks like whatever size the log is, I'll probably lose, I don't know, maybe 2 inches of somewhere here and there because of the bend that's in it. But we're going to check it out as soon as I bring it over here and put it on the mill. Well guys, we've got that log on the bunk here. Again, I got distracted by one of the neighbors come over about something. But anyway, you can see from here how hard that thing goes up in the air. It's about 4 inches off the bunk. This one is basically touching at this end. So it has a pretty good sweep to it there. If you look across this from one end to the other, you can see by looking at that there's a pretty big dip in here. I had gotten a couple questions about different things. Somebody had mentioned using templates or a pattern on the front of the log when you go to cut to tell you where to make your cuts. So I'm going to make one of them patterns now and just show you what or how you would use that and when you can't use it or when it wouldn't really help you to use it. Okay, so if we look at this log, and this is the small end, I like putting the small end towards the machine, towards the saw head, because I know that if I cut this, I'm not going to come out of the log at the other end prematurely somewhere. That's just my own thinking here. So this is a 13-inch at this end, which means that I definitely can get an 8-inch cant out of here if the log is straight. Now if you look down the log, I'll just pull the tape measure here. You can see, I ought to be using my string, but you can see there's probably a 2.5 inch bend in this log at this point. And it might be worse depending upon which way you turn it. There's also some big knots on this thing that might have something to do with when I go to cut the boards. But anyway, nonetheless, what they were talking about here was making a template that you could just put a square on here and start cutting from that. If the log is straight, that's not an issue. You can do that, because we know that out of this size log, 12-inch, I can get an 8-inch cant. Okay, I already know that. That's not something that's unknown. It's a known. It's a mathematical fact that out of a 12-inch circle you can get an 8-inch square. Okay, on the inside of it, interior square. So here's the point. If I take an 8-inch square piece of template, and I'll go get one just to show you this. Okay, so here, this is an 8x8 square. Now if you adjust this thing so that you are inside the bark, you can see that you can get an 8x8 cant out of this. Maybe even an 8.5 by 8.5. My point with this is, if you're going to use this, especially if you're going to mark lines or you're going to mark, board sizes on here, I don't really see the purpose of using a template like this other than to know what size cant I'm getting out of it. I already know that with the cant sheet that I have because it tells me the size cant. So in order to find the cant, then let's say 8-inch, all I have to do is pull this down here until I am at 8 inches. So right there is where 8 inches is, and you can see that it's basically the same place this was before. So all I do is take and go 8 inches, measure, horizontally from one side to the other, and that is where my cut would be for an 8-inch cant. Now whether I cut that first or not, sometimes you can get another board out of here. Like, what if it's 8.5 one way and an 8.5 inch cant one way and 8 inch the other? You might be able to get another board out of this thing. So I can understand using this if you don't have a tape measure, if you don't have a sheet like I have that tells you, the size of the cant that you're going to have automatically. So since I already know it's 8 by 8, I really don't need that. Now here's the other thing. And this goes for no matter what log you have, but because this log has a bend in it, if I take this cant template, and let's say I got to level it up, make sure it's level. So if I level this up and I cut this one off first, and maybe I cut that one, and it doesn't matter which one you cut first, but let's say I cut this one and now I'm going to cut this one. Because of the hump that's in there, I have a 2-inch, and you can see I got 2 inches from here to the end of the tree. I have a 2-inch variation over here. So that means that if I cut according to that template, I'm going to be outside the tree right here when I cut, or outside the log. So that's not going to help me then. That's why I would rather use a string to tell me where the center of this log is. Now you can do it with the tape measure as well. I'm just explaining why I don't use that. I'm not saying you shouldn't use it. I'm saying why I don't use it. Alright, so that's basically the center of the tree there, and this is the center of the tree here. Let me just look at this a little bit. I'll just come over a little bit here. And if you look here, I don't know whether you can see how well you can see this. Move the camera over here a little bit. Bullseye! Now if you look down here, you can see you have more wood over here than you have over here. In fact, you have 2 inches more wood on that side than you do here, because we pulled a straight line down here and showed that here. Okay? Now I don't have to measure it because I can guess 2 inches, and anybody who's done a lot of measuring can do that. But this is why, even though this may be good for a nice straight log, it might not work too well and won't for this log. Okay? Because there's no way that you can take the diameter and calculate that bend and know where to put this center here. I mean, you can figure, you know already that this is going to be 2 inches smaller than an 8-inch cant, possibly, because of what you got there. It all depends on how you cut it. If you bring this all the way over to the edge there, let me see what you're seeing. Yeah, if you bring this as far over here as you can, to the very edge, now you see you're giving yourself about 1 inch here, maybe 1.5 inches there. You might be able to get an 8-inch cant out of this that way. And technically that's what I'm doing by knowing about that 2 inches. So instead of putting this in the center, I would move it over that way as far as I could and see if I can get that out of there. And if you measure this, you can see that that is about 2 inches. So I would say I can get an 8-inch cant out of this. What you want to try to remember is, when you're looking at this whole setup here, try and imagine this round part being at that end, and this square, you're trying to line that up like you would line up the sights on maybe a gun or something. You want to line that up. And once this is going to aim through and come out the other end without, losing wood, then you can go ahead and cut there. You can set this up. I could take a marker and do the same thing by drawing this out. I mean, you could use these patterns. I don't see, at this point I don't really see a benefit to it other than I have a visual aid to tell me what I have here, which I already, you know, in my mind I see it because I know I have 2 inches or better here compared to the bend that's in the log. So you can use these, and I'm not saying you shouldn't. They, you know, different size templates for different size logs. But if you have a bend in the log, then, you know, you might have an issue. Or if you're trying to cut with the pith directly in the center, you may not end up with an 8-inch cant. Now the pith is right here. Let me get it to the tape. So let's measure from different sides here. So the pith is right there. Let's say I got 6.5 there. At this end I got 6.5. Here I have 6.5. But over here I have like 6.25. So and this may not be a good example of this, but the pith can be anywhere in there. It could be way over here depending on how the log grew. It could be anywhere, so you need to look at that. And then you need to look at the pith at this opposite end here. Now at this end here, you know, just telling you, this is 15 inches at this end, which is, you know, 2 inches or 3 inches bigger than that end. The pith is about 9.5, and here it's only 8. So the pith is like offset in there. So if your goal is to get the pith, like say in the center of a bowl, you're going to cut boards for the center of a bowl, you know, like a chunk of wood, then you want to line them up exact so that you can end up with that. But you're going to end up with something smaller than an 8-inch cant then, possibly, okay? Only because if you want to keep this in the center, that means that you have to come over, you know, so far. And if you're within that 2 inches, which, you know, like there's the center of the tree. I've got 4, 5, 6. I've got 6 and a little bit right here. So that means that I'm going to be just missing the bark at this 2-inch offset here, which is down in here. So that may not be something someone would care for. Of course, if you're making bowls, you're going to be cutting this up in sections. So therefore, you know, you can pick out these good sections, and then there'll be some sections past the bend that may be good if you don't want to use sapwood in the bend or in the bowl. But anyway, we're talking about these templates here, and you can mark these templates, by the way. You can mark the template all kind of ways. You can fasten it here different ways. I'd stay away from nails, although, hey, 2 thumbtacks in here with those push pins. You could actually cut through here, put marks where you want to cut your boards if you want to. But again, I don't see that a reason for doing that. It's sort of doubling up on your work. And like I say, if the log is bent, this may get tossed out the window. Even though it fits on here, you might end up with a cant that looks more like this because of the bend down there rather than that full 8-inch cant. And, you know, if you start cutting that the wrong way, like this side, and you come out of the wood, you just defeated your purpose of, you know, measuring and using your brain to come up with the answer to where you should cut. So it's not really a hard thing to figure out, but, you know, you need to know where to put this on the log. If you just take every log and use the biggest size square that's in every log to do the cant, it's not going to be long before you run off the log and your cant is ruined on one side because of what you've done here. And, you know, it's up to you if you want to fool with it. Let's say you did put this in the center. Okay, I start cutting here when the log is turned upright. Well, let's say I'm going to cut right here for now. Once I get to the bend, I'm going to be coming out of the tree, going back into the tree. That means that this board and that board that you just cut, you can't use them for nothing anyway, at least if you're going after full length. My goal in cutting is always the same. The longest board, the best board I can get, from the log that I have. I try not to go less than 8 foot because I do not want to be stacking all kind of pieces around here. I've kept some, I have some in the kiln drying, but that's not what I really want to do. So, you know, these help you to visualize, like I said, where your cant's at in the face of the log right here. But it's not going to help you to visualize the cant down here, because whatever you have here has to line up with a straight line down here somewhere. Okay, so you could, you know, level the log, put this square down at that end, put the square at this end, and you can make it come through. You know, like if you come through here, you could have this leveled so that it comes out down there at the same place, and it probably will. You know, you're going to get an 8-inch cant or an 8-inch size. If you cut here and at the bottom, well, you will come through that stump end with this 8-inch sort of square. But the boards in the middle will be where the problem is. So I think that answers that question. I'm sure that there's going to be some rebuttal to that, and that's fine. Whatever you want to do is up to you. But like I say, you can mark this for 2-bys, you can mark this for 1-by. You could actually use a magic marker and mark the log any way you want. But the settings on the Wood Miser here especially are good enough that I can trust the 2-inch mark, the 1-inch mark. Now I know you've seen me measuring them, and I just want to make double sure. Having this would mean I have to check this, I have to check the Wood Miser, and then I got to check with my tape. I'd rather just do it with a tape and be done with it. So I hope that answers why I don't use these templates. But like I say, there's no reason why you can't. And the main thing that would be is, if you have straight logs, this would be a visual aid on how big the cant's going to be when you go through the log. Okay guys, so we looked at the template. Now what I want to do is I just want to give you another thought process here. We know there's a 2-inch bow in this log, okay? So watch this. We have 12 inches here, which gives us an 8-inch cant. But down here, we have 15 inches. So 12, 13, 14, 15. Now think about it. This end is 3 inches bigger than that end, and the bend is 2 inches out of being, you know, round with that part of the log. So chances are that I'm going to end up with an 8-inch cant regardless, just because that end is an 8-inch cant. This is 2 inches off of that, but this end of the log is 3 inches bigger. So that means from this edge over here, I still have, you know, more than an 8-inch cant I can get out of that. So that's just part of the thinking that I use to come up with, you know, what I'm going to end up with here. Let me just check where the center of this. It's 11 and a half off the bunk. I'm 8 and a half, so I need 1, 2, 3 inches. I need to raise this about 3 inches to make it even with that end. That's the pith now I'm working with. So I'm going to try moving it 2 first, because 2 inches up here might move that end down, because that end's actually up off the bunk. So let me take this up 2. See what we have here. So off the bunk, I have 10 3/4 at this end. And at this end I have 10 3/4. So 2 inches, raising this up 2 inches, put the pith now, right? Not necessarily the center of the tree, but the pith. It has the pith right in the center horizontally going this way. if I roll this log, that pith may not be in the center anymore, because even though you're picking out 2 points, and naturally you can rotate around 2 points, the problem with it is you're not holding those points steady. And when you roll the log, those points can go in the shape of a circle themselves. So, you should have listened to your geometry, that's all I'm saying. Okay, so what I'm going to do here now is let's use this just to figure out where we would cut this cant out of here. Okay, so we're going to cut out along the top here. Let me get a marker. Now guys, remember what I said to you about cutting a bent log. You either want to bend to that side, this side, or straight up and down. Somewhere on that X axis, or that crosshair, you want the log that way, simply because the wood miser cuts horizontally. And as long as you have it horizontal there, it's going to be easier to work with and figure out where you can make your cut. Now, because I know that this side here is bowed that direction, in other words, the bow's like this, I'm going to move this template over this way a little bit. See, I have some space there. I'm going to try and center it as best I can. And right about there is probably going to be it. So, here, let's just suppose that we did that. So now we have some kind of a visual aid for the 8-inch cant. Now, to me, I don't do this like this. And you guys know that if you've watched my channel. I don't like doing it like this. It's taking me too long to come up with where the cant's going to be. But let's just say that that's where it is. So let me start the saw. Okay, so here's what you have. If you look there, even though we brought this down plenty far enough to get an 8-inch cant, we don't have the 8-inch cant here. Okay, so what this means is that this cut has to go down lower to get that cant to be 8 inches. In fact, at this point, it's only 3.5 inches. So already my 8-inch cant is not going to work out here too well. So I can turn this now and go ahead and try and make these cuts, but if I do that, I'm limiting myself to where I might be able to move this thing. So even though I have 8 inches here, an 8-inch cant here, and at this end I have an 11-inch cant showing, possible cant. In the middle here I only have 3.5 inches, so I'm not really happy with that. So if I go down here, probably, I don't know, an inch, I'll probably get my 8-inch cant down there. So if I go down an inch here, okay, if I go down 1 inch here, that's going to put this cant down a little bit. Now this cant's drawn almost a half, 3/4 of an inch, 8 and 5/8, because I just went around it with the marker. But this is my point. You can't judge by just because you put a square here doesn't mean it's going to transfer all the way through. So now, you know, I'm not sure of how guys who use this, what their next move would be. I know for me, my next move right now is I want to forget that and come down an inch here and trim this off. But I'll tell you what, let's keep going like this, leveling the pith on the next cut, just to see what's going to happen when you make. I'd like to make a cut over here. That's what I'd like to do. Because if I go that way, I'm already cutting off. If I cut that end off, I lost my cant for sure. If I cut this one off, I'm not losing the cant because that's where the bend is. And I just wanted to show you that if I turn it that way and cut it, what's going to happen is I'll be out of the tree somewhere down in here. Let me turn the tree. It's going to take me a little bit to get it set up. I'll turn it, or turn the log and show you. Okay guys, so I turned that log the opposite way because I know that using that template is going to mess me up on this bent log. But I just want to show you how it would mess you up. So it was kind of tough getting that thing to be on a 90 over there. But nonetheless, that's gonna have to be close enough for now. We're gonna cut that right there. See, this is why I don't like using these templates, because even though I'm right at the template and I have the log, the pith pretty much centered, this is what happened here. So that is by no means a cant. I can't work with that. So you understand what I'm saying? You need to be able to move your cut to be able to come up with the full-size cant that you're wanting to get. Now if I would have cut this over here by putting this in the center, if I would have made this cut next, which would have been natural, I would have rolled this over here, that would have been on top, I'd have cut that. There's no way that I would have had a good cant out of this, okay? I would have messed the cant up already, which just following this, you can see how, you know, badly that has me messed up there already. Now the next cut, this bottom cut here or this cut here, the side cut, will have a nice 8-inch cant to it. However, a nice 8-inch face all the way down, but this side doesn't. So that means that if I roll this and I cut it, and let me just show you what I mean here. And explaining this is worse than actually doing the work. Okay, now if I take the saw and I bring it down to here and I run through there, I have taken off what I would need to help me build that cant up. Because technically I need to bring this over this direction. But how are you going to know that if all you use is the template? The best thing to do is to use that string method I said, because that'll give you true center of the tree cuts. Right now we're trying to find the center of the tree and guess at it because we're only using this template. And like I say, if I cut right here, that'll give me that 8-inch cant, but I don't have the 8-inch cant, or that'll give me an 8-inch face, but I don't have an 8-inch face on the bottom. So I need to stay up off that a little bit just to get close to this cant that I want. Now because this log is bent, or has a bow in it, you still may not get an 8-inch cant out of this, okay? And it might be 8 inches one way and not the other. I don't want to lose this log just for the sake of making a video. So instead of cutting this down at the mark, which is down here, let me just take a look at this. We're 9 inches off the bunk. Let me see where that brings me here. See, at this end down here, there's 3 more inches of wood left from that 9 inches. But if I cut it there, I'm going to end up with only with cutting a lot of that wood away and throwing it away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up an inch here. Let me go back down there. I got messed up here looking at this. Okay, so that's that. So we're at 8.5. So there's an inch. So I would rather cut it up there and give myself that extra inch to play with, because I think that on the bottom side, if I cut an inch up higher, I'll be able to get that full 8-inch cant. So let me try this. Now you can see, because the hump in this log, because the hump is this way, I have a full 8-inch cant all the way down. I keep saying cant, what I mean to say is an 8-inch face. And even though I took like 1 inch of wood at that end, I lost 3 inches at this end. Okay, so I'll bring the saw up and we'll take a look at this and see how we end up. Now you can see this has a high spot and this still has a bow coming out this way. So we're definitely, if we cut on the line, there's no doubt in my mind that we are going to get an 8-inch face if we cut down here this low. But if we cut that low, we don't have an 8-inch face on this side. So we have to stay higher than that. So let me just... See, now that there's going to be about 8 inches. And because of the way that that log is bowed, that will give me that 8-inch face that I'm looking for that'll make up the cant. But then you're going to see I'm going to have to cut off that other end and bring that up here. Okay, so like I said, we have an 8-inch face all the way down there. A little bit of wane on it, but you know, we don't worry about a little bit. So let's turn the log around and see what we have over there further. With this here just gets this cant right there, okay, so I'll just get it, but that's not the side I'm worried about. I'm worried about this side. Okay, this is the side that was already previously cut. Okay, so we already cut on our mark and ended up with what we got there. So we need to come down there. So this is why I say this template can be deceiving. So we actually have to come down here, the same thing we got there, which is about 1.5 inches. But I'm only going to go down 1 inch because I want to see if I can get just cut the bark off this tree here. This log. is cut 8.5 inches off the bunk because I want to make sure I'm going to have some wood left here since I made that first cut with the template where it was. Okay, so what I have there now, from that bottom cut to the top, is 8 inches. So this right here is an 8 by 9 inch cant. Okay? Now, if I would have cut straight through, and if I would have jumped in succession, cut this, cut that, cut the next one, I would have screwed myself up for having an 8 inch cant. I would have lost the cant. So this is why I don't like using that template. And even though I came down there, or I came down into the wood further, if you look down there, if you look down here, I still should come down another inch yet to get down to what I actually need to have a nice face. So, you know, and I'm beyond that. I can't get it anymore and still have an 8 inch cant. So my first board off of there is going to definitely be bad. So let's take a look at what we got here now. And guys, keep in mind that what I'm showing you here is what I would not do. This is how I would not want to cut the log. I would rather use that string method that I showed you earlier. So we have two faces here that are not conducive to a nice 8 inch cant. Okay? So we're going to lose some off of that. Now this one here, this side, we can afford to lose some off of here because we have 9.5 inches there. But, you know, we still, on the bottom, I believe, don't have the cant that we got. Let me look down there once. Now that is a good cant. Okay. That's a cant we just cut. So, if I would have cut on that line, I would have lost this first board. Instead, I salvaged the board down at the bottom, and it only has a little wane on one side, and I can still cut a 1 inch board off the top of this. Now those of you who use templates to find your mark, you could say, well, you know, if I'd have seen that and I would have cut that way. But my point is, if you put the template on and you make a cut without measuring the bend in the log and everything, how do you know where that cut is going to be? How do you know that you're not cutting off your wood that you need? So you wouldn't want to cut on the high spot. So in summing that up, you'd have to say to yourself, well, if I cut on the low side with the template, on where all the interior bends are, that would be the safest way to cut it. However, if you notice, I had to roll the log the opposite way, had nothing to judge the straight cut on, and except to eyeball that, or you know, you could use a level, I suppose. But then again, we have guys who don't want these level for some reason. They don't think they should be level. I don't know how to answer you as far as, you know, what's the best, or does that template way work? All I'm saying is I wouldn't use it. There's no need for me to use it. I don't like using it. I thought about it when I first bought the mill, and it just didn't seem to make any sense. Cut all the way through there, even though I could go a little bit lower just to see if I got an 8-inch face or not. The battery died there, but anyway, that's the cut that I just made. It's not too bad, a little bit of wane on it. I could probably make siding from that piece if I wanted to, especially the first cut. The second cut I may want to do something different. I'd probably take a board out of there in another way, but let's see how I look here. I basically have an 8.5-inch cant at this point. But all I'm trying to show you though is, do you see how using that template would have been off? So that template literally needed to go to one side and down a little more than not. And that's, you know, what I was after. I wanted to show you that. And that's why I don't use a template. Okay guys, so there we have, that's an 8-inch cant, and if you can see on this side, I'm off by about 1.25 inches off of where the template would have been. So if I would have cut the top first, or this was the top at the point, if I would have cut this first and this second, I would be out of an 8-inch cant. So this is why I don't use templates, and I would prefer to use the string method. When you saw me pull the tape measure down there, I was using the string method. I just used the tape measure to tell me how far off I was. So, and I got heartburn for some reason. What the heck did I have for lunch? I only had an egg sandwich for lunch. Well, anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've been watching my videos, this should be a real eye-opener for you, this video, because I know it was a lot of work to make this, and I'm not even going to bother cutting that up because I had to turn this log so many different ways trying to figure out what to do with that template. But this is why I don't use a template. Let me measure that and see what we have here. It's 1.5 inches difference. All I want you to do is remember that that template was placed in the center of the face of the tree when we started, of the cut log. And if we would have followed it with the second cut, now imagine if that would have been the first cut you'd have made, you'd really been screwed up. Okay, so anyway, there we go. Nice 8-inch cant, and then we can get some siding out of that. Have a good one. Okay guys, so to end this video, I'm going to say this. There is no reason why you can't use a template like this on straight logs. Center the log with the toe board according to the other end, the pith usually. If you have a nice log and the log is straight, then you can use this template method and you won't have a problem. Okay? But if you have a bend in the log, and sometimes the bend, let me just say this, sometimes you can cut a log, especially maple. You'll cut maple, and before your eyes, that log will bend as soon as you take some stress off of it. I've had that happen with maple a couple of times. Hemlock sometimes, but not, or not hemlock, white pine sometimes, but not as much. So, you know, just to, so you know that I'm not condemning this. No reason why you can't use a template. if you have a straight log, okay, and you center the pith or you center the log, find the center of it one way or another and center it with the toe board. Cut your cant, you're going to have no problem. But if you have the slightest bow in that log, and depending upon how long the log is, like a slight bow, a certain radius bow, realize that when you're talking about a radius, okay, you have a bend, the longer the legs are, in other words, the longer it is from the center of the bend to each end, so 10 foot, 12 foot, 16 foot logs, the worse that bend becomes because the ends of the logs are moving further away from the center. So you want to keep that in mind. So no bend, straight log, use this if you want to. You got bends in a straight log, you better follow my string method, because otherwise you're going to end up with pieces of wood that you don't want. Well, we got the sawdust cleaned up, and now I'm going to think about what I want to get out of this thing.